Okay, this time for another SDN Cast. Is number 36 today, and we are recording January the 19th. Your hosts for tonight are Fanie Reynders, Matt van Stam, that's me. And we have a special guest tonight. It's Brady Gaster from the West Coast, and he will be showing some stuff from Microsoft that he created himself. And let's kick the intro in.
Hey, good evening.
So how are you, Brady?
Doing good. How's it going?
Yeah, great.
Apparently, Martin, you're white at the moment, so we cannot see you.
Oh, shit. That's blooper number one.
There we go. There we go. Hi. Everything good?
Oh, I love all the sound effects. Those are awesome.
Well, it's going to be awesome, but not for long. Apparently, it's going to be taken away.
Oh,
So we have to make use of the sound effects while we still can.
nice.
Be on the Google graveyard.
Along with Reader.
Along with Reader, yes, absolutely. So so you're joining us all the way from America.
Mhm.
That's the first time we ever have international guests so far on the show.
No way.
Very honored to have you. Yes. Very excited also to see the stuff you have to share.
Cool.
Martin, apparently there's much
I was
happening.
looking at your website, and let's see if I can pull this up. And you are doing something with music as well?
Oh, I do quite a bit with music. Yes. Actually have my my core Volcas here in the office today because I was going to have a mentoring meeting with Matt Henderson from the mobile apps team or the Azure App Service team. He and I get together every couple of months and we do kind of a MIDI fun day and mentoring meeting. And it turns out I have some changes that have been suggested from some people in the Azure org. So I have some work to do later on today, and I might have to skip my social meeting. But nonetheless, I've got definitely a pretty strong interest in MIDI gear and technology. Just seems to be a nice place for people that are into computers and into music to be able to tinker with MIDI. So kind of best of both worlds. Recently did a show with Pete Brown where we talked about all the stuff we wanted for Christmas. I think we racked up about $100,000 worth of Christmas presents that we wanted from our family and Twitter followers, a bunch of different keyboards and stuff. So, but yeah, that is my blog you have pulled up there. It's bradygaster.com. I'll have that pulled up whenever I start screen sharing today, which you guys let me know whenever you want me to do that. I don't know which screen on the bottom right is the one that's live or if the one that I'm looking at right now is live. So.
Now, Martin has control over the screens, but you can also have control over what you see. But what the public sees, that's what Martin is showing. So don't stress too much about that.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah, whenever you want me to do a screen share, I'll do that. But I can start with questions or whatever. I'm easy. So.
Oh, well, let's start with some news items that we found on the internet and might be interesting to share with people. And
Cool.
Let's see. Put the focus on this. Well, the first one that I found was the introducing Electron to the Windows runtime, and it's an article by Felix Rieseberg and Paul Betts, and these guys from the Slack desktop client. We just talked about it a bit, and it's created in Electron. And what they currently did is put it in the Windows Store.
Okay.
So I was quite surprised about it because they made quite a fuss when Microsoft released the Teams from the Office team, and well, actually, the guys itself working on it, they are more open on it, and they put it just in the Windows Store today, or 2 days ago.
This Electron technology is quite amazing. Isn't Visual Studio Code also built on Electron?
I believe that part of Visual Studio Code is indeed built on Electron. I know that if you're in Visual Studio and you're using either the Cloud Explorer or you have grabbed the Storage Explorer, I think that Explorer is also built on top of Electron as well. It's a pretty cool thing. It's basically, you can use HTML and JavaScript to build your own applications, and they just get hosted inside that Electron wrapper. It's pretty awesome. I have some things I'd like to do with it for the tools that I've been working on, but I have not gotten under the covers with it yet. So hopefully someday you'll see some UI and some of the stuff.
Yeah, you can recognize that it's Electron by the icons on the left side on the how do you call it, sidebar or something.
Mm-hmm.
These are the Electron icons mainly.
Cool.
But all it's basically it's a huge iframe with special APIs that opens up from a JavaScript world to the native world, right?
Yep, that's my understanding. For example, one thing that we did with the Cloud Explorer team, great group of guys. One of the things that they did was when you open up a Cloud Explorer inside of VS, you see all of your Azure resources just iterate in the form of a tree view. All those icons and the different tree view nodes, when you right click on those nodes, you have things like attach the debugger, open up the portal, et cetera, et cetera. Those gestures would actually trigger commands from within VS. So it's kind of interesting. It was an HTML wrapper with JavaScript running, and the JavaScript would fire events, and then Visual Studio would capture those events from that Electron window and actually run commands. What was interesting about that from an architectural perspective was, we had the Server Explorer first. A lot of the commands that were in the Cloud Explorer were the same commands. It would trigger the same functionality that Server Explorer triggers, but the plumbing for it is obviously wholly different, because you're coming from HTML and JavaScript and then making VS do things. So the interop there was very interesting. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. But in terms of the operating system, like the Windows, certain APIs that gets exposed, does that also include Cortana?
I don't know. I have no idea. That's a great question, Matt.
Martin?
I don't know.
That would be great, actually.
An interesting thing I got from the article is that they actually used some tooling for this to put it in store, and that was pointing to an npm package Electron Windows Store. Have the screen up, I think. Yes. Let me focus on that.
Yep.
That allows you to put an Electron app in the Windows Store. So apparently there is some tooling already available to do that for you.
Huh. I haven't seen that.
I was wondering if Visual Studio Code is available in the Windows Store.
I don't know.
Well, technically, you can make it available.
You could.
Yeah, with this package.
Well, you can grab the source code from GitHub.
It's true. Let me actually ask Dias real quick. See if that's
I love
available.
it. You can actually ask live people questions from Microsoft about this. Hey, how cool is that?
I'll ping him.
Yeah,
just
copy
quickly ping him.
the npm package and put it in there and put it in the store.
Huh.
And if we go to the next item, we're just waiting for your answer, if it's still coming. UWPDesktop NuGet package, NuGet, as Miguel de Casa calls it. It's 14.93. There's a lot of news around the UWP stuff. They also have another post here, developing your ID into UWP app, and it's all from the start of the year. So apparently they decided to go more public on the UWP stuff, as people. The rumor is going around that UWP was abandoned a bit. So I think they tried to turn it around somehow by excessively posting all stuff on this. And going from there, an interesting article by the ReSharper. As you all know, the .NET code is always translated first into IL. ReSharper has some tooling for to look at that. They also have a dotPeek that's separated from the ReSharper tooling. So you can, I think there's a link somewhere here. Let's see. Here I already clicked sometime. That gets you to the individual download of dotPeek to look at your IL. So that's kind of interesting to look at if you are interested to see that. And you can see what the differences are actually made under the covers for each of the platforms that you're working on.
Is it happening live?
I think so, yeah.
Because, I mean, viewing the IL is not new. Excuse me.
Well, no, it's not new, but it's intermediate. Yeah, the name says it already.
Yeah. Well, that's quite interesting.
Well, last week we had announcing of a new insider preview, the build 15.007. I have it on my 5020, and it's terrible. It's constantly rebooting and crashing, and when it's not rebooting, it's freezing. So I have a total useless phone right now. I pinged dotNed this afternoon that he has to put out a new release for me because my phone is pretty useless right now.
Is that specifically the phone, or was it the desktop version as well?
I think I was scrolling down in this, and they actually updated the documentation here with known issues, for instance, for mobile. And ta-da! Added 13th. We investigated reports of random reboots of some devices with this build. So apparently, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
So hopefully, they will get a new insider build soon.
Was this version that?
It's the 15.007.
I believe there's a version that's out or that will come out that have Windows Hello automatically lock your screen when you go away.
Yeah, that's this one.
This one, okay.
Yeah, if you that's if you're on your PC and you walk away from your PC, then your screen's locking. There's no way to turn it around. So if you walk back, then it's unlocking again. But
I tried actually to sort of, in my terms, hack the whole Windows Hello thing by taking a picture of myself and just trying to sort of unlock the thing, but it knows between a picture and yourself. And also, what was funny is, you know, when you're sitting in front of it, it unlocks. You know, the screen goes up and it goes in. But let's say you then leave and come back again, or you sit in front of your computer and you're not really working on it. It's going to be unlocking, you know. But apparently it's only locked. You can just swipe up. You know, it doesn't lock again when you look away.
Oh, weird. I haven't actually gotten that set up yet. I just got the anniversary edition installed more recently than probably most everybody. Long story, trust me.
Yeah, you also need the Hello camera. If you have, in my case, I have the Logitech 930, and it's not a Hello camera, so you need a dedicated camera for that.
I have to try mine out. I haven't even tried yet, but I will.
It's one. Is it specific Hello camera, or is it a Hello compatible camera?
Hello compatible. I think it's original built by Intel.
Because it needs to have capabilities of infrared and stuff like that.
I think it has two cameras side by side, so you can actually see some depth in your image, and that's probably why you're holding a picture for it. It doesn't work.
So the next thing is, if you're going to be 3D printing my face.
Yeah. Yeah. On the other end, if you look at the Connect sensor that has a mechanism to see the veins on your skin and see your heartbeat, if it's thrusting or not.
Well, you made a comment about the UWP stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have too many meetings with the teams that do that stuff. I'm over in the Azure world, so I'm in a different set of buildings, different side of campus. But I did have a meeting yesterday with some of the Windows folks, with whom we're working on the documentation stuff for them on docs.ms.com. And I can say with unbridled confidence that I don't think you're going to see any waning of the UWP term used. Universal Windows Platform is definitely very much a thing. We're very proud of it, and it's going to continue to be there. So,
yeah, we were kind of aware of that, but if you go on Twitter, there's some high activity on this.
yeah, there is.
Especially with the mobile. Somehow went away with Microsoft currently. If you go to the Microsoft store, there is actually no phone available if you want to buy one.
Yeah.
So that throws in the rumors of people thinking abandoning UWP. Well, in fact, it's not real.
Right.
Before we move on, I just want to actually mention we've got some guys watching online, and if you guys want to, feel free to ask Brady anything, like literally anything about what he's doing and working for Microsoft, anything about MIDI music. He's your guy. Just I think over here, you can post the questions there, and then we can actually get them to answer.
Yeah, you can enter the chat box on YouTube, and we are monitoring that.
Yes.
So you have a recording of all the profanity that I'll speak about later. That's good.
So where were we? Let's see. Yes, this one blog post on the MSDN site. Interesting thing about the core image processing. Everything is slowly moving into .NET Core, and the image processing might be something you need. And this blog post is actually showing four different libraries that you can use. Let's go all to the bottom. Let's see.
That's cool.
It's comparing Core Compat, System Drawing, Image Sharp, Magic.NET, and Skia Sharp. I'm pronouncing it right. I don't know. Actually, I don't see much difference between each of everyone. So just pick the one you like best.
So I got a reply from Mr. Diaz and the code team. Just says it's a very long story. So he doesn't say that very often. He actually dropped a GitHub link in. I'll paste that into the thing. But if you're interested in the story about VS Code and the store, I think it might be summed up in the GitHub issue that I just posted.
Okay. Well, I suppose if you really want to do it like a Visual Studio from the store, you can maybe make a shortcut, and just like ship a blank app there that just opens up a link to the actual site. Surely. Cool. But yeah, what's the benefit and stuff?
It was explore what it takes to ship VS Code as a UWP application.
Sort of blends together all the topics we've talked about so far.
Yeah. It's indeed a long story.
Yeah. There's probably more to it, but
I put it in the show notes. Let me copy that. Paste it in.
Okay, what's
another item by Michael Michaelis. He's doing a lot of the C# document. He has a lot of C# books. He created an article on the essential MSBuild stuff, how to get into there. There was some story about moving from there was some Fanie, you know that there was some intermediate file with the JSON extension, and now they moved back to the.
Yeah, it's a project. The project.json file. It's now moved back to the CS project. It was actually like, correct me if I'm wrong, Brady, but there was actually like an experiment done by like David Fowler in the team, or am I mistaken? And then because of the whole change,
and they moved back to C project, and because there was a lot of old dependencies that they actually needed, and they merged the formatting of it.
But I must add, they didn't just move back to CS project; they moved back to a newer CS project.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely it's not the traditional CS project. It is the traditional MSBuild. We had a lot of customers who were reporting. I don't know if they were convergence issues or migration issues or build issues. Syed Hashimi would probably be a good person to ask about that, because he's been my go-to MSBuild guy for a really long time. There's a gentleman on the .NET team also named Zlatko. Zlatko was the PM responsible for actually bringing back the MSBuild support. I have mixed feelings on both Project JSON and CS project support, but let's just say I got used to Project JSON after a lot of fighting, and I really like Project JSON, and I still really like Project JSON, but I do understand that there are a lot of customers that really need that CS project support. I fought going to Project JSON, and then when I did, I was surprised that we went back to CS Proj, but that's what most of our customers needed. So,
yeah, personally, I also like CS project.json, but I see the benefits of CS Proj and stuff like that for backwards compatibility and whatnot. But why not support both? Was that an option?
I don't know. I don't think that there's that's one that I would have to talk to Zlatko about. I could hit him up maybe during the call if people are interested in that. Use the chat window if you are. Zlatko would definitely be the guy to ask. You can even ask those questions on the public.net GitHub repository, and I know they'll get back to you if they haven't already discussed it in great length. I'm pretty sure they have. I don't think that it's possible to go back and forth. Last week when I was working on, or 2 weeks ago when I was working on Downer, one of the things I was still using, I'm using Yo, and the Yo template still had Project JSON, and there were some tweaks that I'll talk about today that I had to do to make it work right with Azure, because Azure has support for the new stuff for Preview 3. So it was expecting a CS project, and I didn't have one, and I didn't want to convert it, so I found a workaround. And it's a workaround using global JSON that Shane Boyer actually kind of helped me work through. I did some terrible copying and pasting, but I got it working, and I don't actually have a CS project. No, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that my recommendation doesn't exist. Do whatever you want. But for me personally, I was staying with the Yo template the way it was. So, but I know there's a converter to convert Project JSON based projects to your CS projects.
That's .NED Migrate, isn't it?
Yeah, .NED Migrate. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I was actually thinking about an idea to, because I spoke to devs that really fell in love with Project JSON. They're sad to go back to CS Proj, frankly. Yeah. And we actually one day in front of the whiteboard, brainstorm ideas how we can actually polyfill the Project JSON back in. And as a third-party driver, sort of almost make it work like T4 templates.
That'd be cool.
You still work on project.json, but it actually generates your CS Proj for you.
Oh yeah, that'd be a really good thing. You should. It's open source. You can contribute.
Exactly. Yeah. So we were actually bouncing around and see how, but I don't have any sort of understanding on all the dependencies of CS Proj. Surely there's way more to it than just file type.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
We ended up talking a sidestep story, and then that sort of killed slow death. But that might be a sort of a good polyfill sort of third party.
That would be fun.
Yeah, if it's possible.
That'd be cool. Let's see that. Like I said, Zlatko would be able to help you with that. I bet he would be. He would probably have some really good feedback for you on that.
Great.
Yeah, what I understood was that a lot of tooling had some issues when they moved it over to the JSON thing, and all the tooling had to be rewritten to accept this, and so they turned it back to the C project thing to make that easier for the tooling.
But the CS project doesn't have IntelliSense yet, does it?
I think so. If the schema in the CS proj file is correct, then I do believe that that you'll get IntelliSense support for it. I have to, like I said, I have to check with Syed, but I do think that support exists.
But I mean, also down to the NuGet level, where you can actually add NuGet packages, and it'll pop up from a. How does that work, by the way? Where does it get its references from? You know, when you say dot. Does it actually go to NuGet and find it there, or is it some cache somewhere?
I think there's a cache. I think there's a local cache. I do know that at some points it does go out and it checks NuGet for the right versions and everything. But I think that there's a cache locally that they bring down. I could also check with some devs on that. If that's the question you guys want answers to, take notes in the show notes, and I'll get answers to all those questions. Then you can put them in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that would be great.
But I do know at some point Project JSON is going out and is checking. I don't know if that's happening in code as well, but I do know VS is doing that. So I think code is doing it too.
Great.
There was last week we discussed the article by Scott Hanselman where he showed all the things that you ought to know for .NET. James Montebagna originally from what's his name? From Xamarin. He looked at this and they had the idea to pick it up as well and do the same thing, but then for Xamarin developers. So he created some similar documentation there to see what Xamarin developers ought to know to start 2017.
This is great.
So he compiled a set of links and documentation that you can go through and learn your Xamarin stuff you need to know. It's cool. Quite good post because this stuff with all the links is crazy, and they split it up to what you need to know if you're going for iOS or Android or Xamarin itself, and it's quite a lot if you ask me.
Yes.
But
Looked at the thing from Hanselman, there's a link in here. Let's click on that.
Looks like his things you need to know this year post. That's cool.
Look, and the same thing. What .NET developers ought to know is to start in 2017. He did the same thing. Need to know and what you should know and what's nice to know. It's also a big list, but it's the essential part is not that big. It's just the first section. But if you go into the one James, that's an extensive list.
Yeah, but that's also more focused on Xamarin.
Yeah, but to be fair, you're also covering 3 operating systems there.
Yeah. Well, technically, one can go and say, well, what every MVC developer ought to know.
Yeah, you can
have
get in some real areas, UWP areas, or
exactly.
Yeah, office development, whatever. There's a lot to learn. You can learn everything every day.
So much to learn.
Yeah, true. And a final link that we put in the show notes, it will be a background. It was posted, I think, also by Donna from the Insider Builds. Maybe someone else. I'm not sure who was it. But they created a background that you can put on the back of your desktop.
Oh wow!
And they put in shortcuts on some fake tiles in here. And, there are only a couple of main ones. I would rather like to see a lot more of this stuff and go much more in detail. But I think the idea is great. You can obviously create something like this yourself and put in all the things.
I need to have that background.
I'll put a link in the show notes, and you can pick
That would
it
be
up.
good.
You know what GitHub is doing with shortcut keys? Have you seen that? Sort of it overlays. Yeah, I can't show it now. Martin, can you maybe bring up GitHub?
Yeah, if you just go to any GitHub page and you do question mark,
Yes.
it shows you all of them. It's hot.
Yeah. Does VS Code have something like that? Because that would be quite cool.
I know that the new VS Code background will show you some popular shortcut keys, but I know it didn't show you all of them. I got an answer from Glenn Condren for you. He says the last time he was involved in the NuGet stuff with Project JSON, it was a local cache, which meant that it knows about all the packages you've ever installed on that machine. So it would search that local cache for everything you've ever installed across all your projects so far, because NuGet's got the centralized thing, and it would search that cache so that it could, it was faster. He's not saying that it goes out, but it must go out because it's finding things that I have not installed. Trust me.
Exactly. Yeah, I've tried it also with my project Stubber, and sort of picked it up. And I was just maybe if it doesn't find it, it sort of tries it from remote. That makes sense.
Yeah, you see it kicking in a bit later after you put in the IDE. Then it takes some time to get processed, and then you get all the intelligence.
So that's basically all the news we have. So it was quite a lot.
Let's go quickly over some events that currently are running close by, and then move over to the actual things that we want to show you, because we are already 3/4 of an hour in. Let's quickly go over this. So we have the NDC. That's is it this week or? Yes, this is 16 to 20. That's already going on. A lot of interesting speakers there. Damien is there, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Among one. Kathleen Dollard, the MVP. And John Skeet, obviously the #1 Stack Overflow poster.
Yep.
The Microsoft Dynamics event. It's next week, not January 24 in Amsterdam. I will put the links all in the show notes if you want to go there. Just finish this quickly. This is the session from Fanie that you are doing this. Tell something about it.
Yes, I'm actually talking about ASP.NET Core at one of the local iSense user groups in Gouda.
Nice.
Check it out.
Where the cheese is coming from.
Where is what?
The cheese is coming from.
The cheese?
Oh, Gouda.
Gouda, yeah. Okay, yeah. Got it.
And then next Saturday, it's the dotNed Saturday by the dotNed group. And that's a bigger event for a full day. You go to see the schedule. Let's see if it's 3 or 4 tracks and also an IoT hands-on. We are thinking about going there, Fanie, don't we?
Yes, maybe like last time. So Brady, what we did last time with Tech Days, we went out and we just, it was actually unofficial. We just decided there we're gonna be capturing the whole sphere. What's it in English? But we the whole environment and how's everyone doing, and did some interviews, and it actually went down very well. This was ad hoc. Let's just do it, and we're gonna maybe do the same thing if it's permissible. gonna go there and just do it.
Okay, that's the events. There are a lot more coming up the month after that, but we will discuss them in another different time and see what's going on there. We have our own session event March 17th. You can still volunteer to do sessions there and contact us at the links in the show notes. If you want to present, let us know.
Awesome.
So let's go over to the main topic for tonight. That's with our guest, Brady.
Hey
Brady,
there.
the floor is yours, or the whiteboard's yours.
Do a screen share real quick. Screen share and make it very meta by sharing the call, and we'll go into infinity. Awesome. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, there are the keyboards.
Cool, yeah. All right, so I'm just pulling up a couple of tabs. If you've ever seen me do any talks before, you know that I tend to go through a series of browser tabs to introduce things. I'll go kind of quick because we got about 20 minutes left. I've got lunch after this, so I could be a little bit late. But then I have to concentrate on the executive orders that I've been given. This is indeed my home studio. It's my Twitter page, so if you want to find me on Twitter, that's definitely the best place. If you want to get in touch with me on email, you can do so at this address, bradyg@microsoft.com. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can do that. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that very interesting during our orientation here, and that's that on average 25 million emails get sent internally every single day at Microsoft. So that's like one Microsoft address to another Microsoft address. We send 25 million of those every day. I get about, especially now that I'm in Docs, I'd say I get about 40% of those emails.
What?
So if you email me and I don't get back to you right away, Fanie can attest I will get back to you. But I do want to point out that I get inundated with emails every day, but I'll do my best to get back to you and answer questions. A lot of times I'll just bounce you to somebody else to kind of get you going. What do I do here at Microsoft? I work on this site. This is Docs Microsoft.com, which I affectionately refer to as DMC. The areas of DMC that I tend to work on are going to be the .NET, ASP.NET, and Azure areas. And specifically what I do is I handle the reference content. So I'll go over here and I'll click on .NET, and you'll see up at the very top you have this .NET Core API reference. This was something that I help PM. We have a lot of people that work on this stuff. If I go over here and say I want to figure out how to deal with the stream, I can actually just type stream and I can get right directly to the stream reference content directly in the main skin. Now, if I were to go to Azure, which is definitely my bread and butter, I tend to be in this area. So I PM all these different SDK sites, the ones that are on Docs MS.com, that is, which are the .NET SDK for Azure, and the Java SDK for Azure, and then the REST APIs for Azure, which I'm going to show you a preview of here in a minute. I'll tell you how I got started with code extensions is because we are going to be onboarding the Node SDK for Azure in the very immediate future. And we also have the CLIs documented, like the Azure CLI, which you'll see right here. So if you went to the Docs MS.com and click on Azure and go to SDK, this is basically where Brady lives. This kind of an area right in here. I'll talk a little bit about the Node SDK in a moment, but let's just say that when I got started with some of the projects that I'll be talking about today, I did not know Node. I'm not a Node guy. I'm a .NET guy for years. I had just not learned a lot about Node. So when I started, I had an idea to write this extension. I thought I want to write a code extension that gives people Azure capability on the Mac and the Linux. Obviously on Windows as well, but anywhere you could run code, you'd be able to talk to Azure. That was kind of my goal. So I felt like the best way to do that would be to sit on top of the Node SDK, and I didn't know Node at all. So I started going through the API reference that the guys have on GitHub.io, which we eventually want to move over to Docs MS.com as well. And I said, like, all I know about Node is what Glenn Block has told me, and all I know about the SDK is what I can read in this API reference. And from my years on the team, on the SDK team, I focused on .NET. So I didn't have a lot of the Node knowledge, and I just literally used that documentation from the perspective of a customer to learn the SDK, thinking about things that I'd want to do in the future to make it better, to improve the documentation experience. And that's kind of how I got started with my extension. One thing I will point out here, Fanie asked me a question: how does Docs MS-Com build? We use this great tool that's also on GitHub called DocFX. DocFX is, for all intents and purposes, it's a static generator. So what you can do is you can aim DocFX kind of like you could do with NDoc or what was the other one? Sandcastle. Kind of like you could do with those guys. You can aim DocFX at your .NET source code, and it will produce reference documentation for your source code. This is in fact exactly what we're doing in the. If I go back to the homepage of Docs, just take off the Azure stuff. I go back over here to the homepage of Docs and I click on ASP.NET. You'll see that we have the ASP.NET reference right here. So if I go to the API reference for ASP.NET, if I were to type in request right here, everything works exactly the same way. You can get directly to all of your types. This documentation is generated directly from the ASP.NET source code repository in GitHub using DocFX. So what's interesting is we actually use DocFX for two things. We use it for generation of our reference content, and then it's a core component of our publishing pipeline. So we have this awesome invention called the Open Publishing System, and OPS sits on top of DocFX and basically pushes everything through it. Something that we've been building out for a while now, and we've kind of been referring to it as I've referred to it as DAS, Documentation as a Service. So I'm definitely trying to do more with it. I do want to point out DocFX has a lot of documentation itself. Obviously, it's very meta, generated by itself. If you want to look at that API documentation, we have it all right here. If you want to learn more about, if you want to go through and learn how to use DocFX, we have some great tutorials. It also supports Swagger, so you can aim it at Swagger API, which will tell you how we're generating our REST API documentation as well. You mentioned John Skeet a little while ago. John Skeet actually submitted a couple of issues to us. He was using DocFX for his, I think it's Joda time documentation or Yoda time. And he had some feature requests that he asked for. Ironically, some of these features were things that we were asking for internally, so the team kind of, oh, that's good. But it was cool to have John Skeet using DocFX. That was kind of a stamp of approval for us. That felt really good. Thanks, John, if you're not too busy and you're watching. It was cool to have you as a customer, so that's fantastic.
ASP.NET documentation earlier was read the docs. Now it's moved over as well, eh?
Correct. It has moved over. You mentioned Read the Docs. I'm actually, tomorrow morning, I have a meeting with Eric from Read the Docs. We're talking to Eric about some of the stuff that we're doing with the Python SDK. Eric's obviously very big in the Python world. So we're talking to Eric and getting some ideas on things like DocFX and Sphinx crossover and that kind of thing. I'm not putting out any plans or releasing anything. There's not a convergent story yet, but he has some good ideas there. So we wanted to talk to him about learn some of the lessons that he's learned around generating documentation from Python, because that's kind of a new area for a lot of us. DocFX makes heavy use of YAML, which kind of brings me to my next project, which I'll talk about here in a minute. DocFX produces this interesting YAML format, which is documented also. You can look about the .NET metadata specification and then the DocFX flavored markdown and all the different things that you can do with DocFX YAML. This is all outlined pretty gratuitously in the DocFX documentation. So if you want to learn more about how our plumbing works, I would definitely encourage you to go out and take a peek at this.
It did change substantially when I was looking at it like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it's evolved rapidly. One of the things that I'm going to switch gears real quick because I want to iterate through some stuff. One of the things that kind of came out of my work in the doc team is that I was I used to be a PM in the product group, and one of the things that I was doing is I was writing articles for for Azure.com, which you'll hear me refer to as ACOM. That's kind of our pet name for it. So we were writing content for ACOM. We've definitely adopted a markdown approach and whatnot. And I really liked the workflow that I had when I was writing content for ACOM and when I write content for Docs MS Com, which doesn't happen that often. I'm too busy engineering stuff for it now. But I like that methodology, and I had been running Mads Christensen, one of my best friends. I've been running his mini blog tool for quite some time, and in spite of the fact that it was my favorite blog engine that I've used ever up to the point where I wrote my own, I think every dev can say that, right? I really missed having that markdown support, and even though his tools were great, it did not comply with kind of the workflow that I'd gotten used to when I would do writing through work. And that was the workflow that I liked, which was basically, write my markdown, commit my markdown to a Git repository, let a build run, and poof, you get a block. So I actually went over the Christmas holiday, the end of year holiday. I went and actually wrote this blogging tool in about a week or two. I think it took me about 3 days to write the product. It took me about 4 days to write the converter to get all my stuff out, which I think is always the case. But I've got a blog post up here where I introduced Downer, what I was talking about. I used to be a big Signal R guy, so everything ends in R. There's a couple of other projects. I have a disclaimer at the bottom of the blog post that use the word Downer in their name. This has nothing to do with those two projects. One of them is a Ruby gem, and I don't know what the other one is. But I do want to point out this is my Downer. Damien made a good quip about it. He said it was a very emo name, and I should have called it Upper. I'd rather relax than be wired. I'm already wired enough, so I called it Downer. And I'll give you a little tour of how I blog with it real quickly. What I'll do is I'll back up and I'll go into my Downer directory, and you'll see that I have a branch here. I'm just going to do code real quick. Pop open my own local Git repo. What I'll show you if I do a switch to master.
Sorry, can you
master.
perhaps zoom in a bit?
Oh, can we zoom? Yeah, I could zoom in. I do have zoom in here. There we go.
Okay.
So what I've done here is I've switched over to my master branch, which is actually the master branch that I've not updated in a minute because I've gotten a few commits from a guy that I'll mention here in a moment. But if I flip over to code and then zoom in one more time using Control-4, what you'll see here is that what I've done with Downer is I've kind of said, well, if you are an ASP.NET Core guy like me and Fanie, you can go into source and you can look at the controllers and you can party on it all you want to, make tweaks, simple requests, all that stuff. But I sort of presumed people might not want to get into the guts of Downer. They might just want to edit their CSS, write their content, and be done with it. So what I've done is I've dangled off a couple of top-level folders, the posts folder, the templates folder, and the CSS folder. And the CSS is really just some very simple CSS to set on top of Bootstrap. I've got two templates. One of them is a layout, and one of them is post, borrowing on some of the ideas that Mads had in Miniblog. And then I've got my post folder here, and this is what you get when you clone the repository directly from GitHub on the master branch. Now, what I do in my own workflow here is obviously I would work off my local branch. So I would say git checkout blog. I'm just doing Control-Tab here. Go into my own personal branch. And my Azure site is actually, sorry for the flickers because I've got translucence turned on. You'll see here now I've got all the different posts that I've written over the years in my post folder. Whenever I do a git push to my GitHub repository, my Azure site happens to be watching my branch of the GitHub repository. So when I go into it, when I do a post directly to it, it'll just do a deployment for me. The magic of Azure App Service, thanks to the Kudu team. So that's sort of a crash course in Downer. I do want to point out that Downer is totally open source. You can get to it right here. Zoom in on it for the show notes. It's GitHub/Brady Gaster. I use very creative handles in my social activity. My whole name spelled out, and then Downer, the project name. So I do want to point out if you wanted to party on this, you could definitely do so. I've actually already gotten a couple of pull requests. Looks like I have 2 more outstanding. And they're coming directly from, I've got one from Glenn. That's good, Glenn Condren. Thanks, buddy. And I've got one from my buddy Shane. Flip over to Shane's blog real quick, tattoocoder.com. One of the other tattoo coders, I have some as well. But Shane's actually submitted a couple of pull requests. One of them was to fix cross-platform path issues, so it ran on other platforms like Mac. And then he added a couple of image compression guys because I was doing a good job of that. And eventually Shane is going to make the build faster. The way Downer works today is I do a complete drop and replace. So the build can take up to 5 or 6 minutes. So I do want to call that out. And that's probably every deployment. So we're going to try to make that better. But if you're into just writing your markdown and having kind of a convention-based approach to organizing your files, take a look at Downer. It'd probably make life a little bit easier for you. I'd love to get your feedback, so feel free to send it in. The other thing I'm going to talk about real quickly, I'll flip over to the right folder here. I'm just going to do CD back up and then go into my Azure Tools VS Code folder. Is a tool that I've been working on since November, and I have to say that I have not been working on it solo. I'll introduce you to some of the people that I've been working on it with. The first one is the guy that I met in Slovenia named Andrzej. We like to talk about guitars a lot. We're both big fans of Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits. Andrzej initially had a couple of ideas and some issues that he submitted. We got some tweaks made. Then this great guy, Ian Philpott from Atlanta.
EMP was this?
Yeah. That's actually that's actually from the EMP. This is a photograph when you first walk into the Experience Music Project, which they've renamed something to the extent of the Pop Culture Museum. There's this huge stack of guitars.
Yeah.
The Andrzej took a picture there. So, and then the next guy that contributed some stuff, specifically the storage stuff, was a DX guy named Ian Philpott from Atlanta. Here's Ian's Twitter page. And a guy who has done so much work over the past couple of weeks is Christos. Here's his blog. He's actually over at NDC London right now doing some presentations. Hopefully he's going to mention the tools that he's been working on with me. And then the last guy is this awesome dude that I've also met through the community, even though he works here at Microsoft, my fellow gray hair buddy, Stuart Leaks. Stuart Leaks is the guy that we've been bouncing ideas off of around using ARM templates and whatnot. Just like everything else I do, the VS Code tools are definitely open source. They're out here on GitHub. You can get to them. And if you want to install them, you could either go to AKA MS VS Code Azure Tools. I can paste that into the chat window right here for the show notes. There's your link. If you go to that, that's where you could learn all about the extension, what it does, see some demos on it, and kind of keep tabs with how it's working out. I do want to call out, this is not a official Microsoft thing. I don't want to say this hopefully yet. Maybe one day the awesome code team will adopt it and take it somewhere that I can't take it in my spare time. But this is something we've been working on our pet project days, and you see we've got over 3,000 downloads so far. It's been a lot of fun to work on. Again, we got some contributions. If you have any feature requests or ideas, we're tracking everything in our issues, and then we're referencing those issues as we do pull requests. If you want to learn kind of what it does, you can go out and you can look here. But what I'll do first is I'll open up code in this folder, which is where I've got the extensions code. I don't have it installed because I'm always, working on it in my spare time. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and hit F5 to run the code. Hopefully I don't have any artifacts locally that aren't checked in, so things might blow up. I'm switching back over here to my code window where I've got this the actual code for my extension running. Looks like something might have failed, so unfortunately I won't be able to show you a demo of my stuff running locally, but what I will be able to do is to install it and just kind of show you how it works all directly. I've got some artifacts locally apparently. So if you're just running code locally and you want to party on it yourself, I'm going to open up a recent folder here. I'm going to open up my temp workspace on my desktop, and I promise I'll have you guys freed up here within the next 5 or 10 minutes. I'm just going to clear out my workspace here as I was tinkering with something. If you want to install it, you can just open up VS Code. I'll do zoom in for you, and you could do Control-Shift-X to go over to Extensions window. And once you're there, you just do a quick search for Azure Tools, and it should pop right up. See that it's at 110. I'll go ahead and do an install on it. One thing I will point out that's listed in the blog and in the notes of the extension is that we actually took a dependency on a different extension called the Azure Resource Manager Tools, which is being worked on by the VS and Azure Tools team, specifically my buddy Brian Moore and Paul Yuk. You see that I've already installed that extension. I'll go ahead and hit reload here. It's going to reload my window.
Just a question, that Azure Resource Manager Tools, that's actually using the Resource Manager API underneath, right?
No, it isn't. That's actually a very good question. I'll go back to my AKA link, and I'll click a link to go off to it. Basically, these tools, they don't actually reach out and make use of the ARM API. What they do is they provide, they actually provide colorization and autocomplete capabilities and features for the templates when you've got the JSON files open up in code. They don't really do any deployment back and forth. They just help you author the stuff itself. The tools that my team has written, they help you do the deployment. I'm going to show you that real quickly. So what I've got here is just my normal browser window open, and I'm going to do F1 to show you the command palette, and I'll just type Azure. You can see all the different Azure commands that we've got. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go to login. And what it's going to do is it's going to reach out and do the device login. So it's going to give me this key right here. You can see that it says it's been copied to my clipboard. So I don't actually have to do that copy. I just go over here and I click sign in. And it's going to fire up a browser window and go to the device login, the device auth. I'm just going to go here and just hit Control V and paste in that code, paste in that token rather that VS Code conveniently placed in my clipboard. I'm going to log into my Hotmail account. And once I log into it, it's going to basically send a webhook request back to the client. And any second, it should tell me that I'm now logged in. So it's telling me that I'm logged in. Now, if I were to scroll down here, I could actually change my subscription. So if I had more than one, I could change it. Or if I wanted to select my region, I could go right here. And this is going to pull down the list for me. And I'll just select West US because that happens to be where I am. Now what I'll do here is I'll zoom in real quickly on the command palette, and I'm just going to do an F1 command. I'm going to do a quick little search for the word search, and I'm just going to show you an ARM trick here, because I know we don't have much time, but I know that there's people out there that probably have had headaches getting started with Azure Resource Manager templates. So I'm just going to show you what I think might be the quickest way to get started with them. I'm going to do search the Azure Resource Manager template quick starts on GitHub. We actually have a GitHub repository full of nothing more than ARM templates. So I'll do a search, and it's going to say, give me a search term. So I'm just going to do a quick search for web app because I'm an ASP.NET guy. It's going to go out, search the GitHub repository for all the templates that have a mention of web app. You'll see I've gotten back the list here. If you wanted to do a search for VM, you could do that, get an even bigger list. But I know that I want to deploy, I want to create a web app that I would pull from a GitHub repository. So I'm just going to type git to search my list that I got back. You'll see that it's already found one called 201 web app GitHub deploy. And what's going to happen now is it's actually going to reach out to that Git repository and pull down both my template and also pull down the template parameters file directly from that guy. Now I'm going to create my own custom site here, so I'll just call this my demo site for SDN. I'll give it an 01 because nobody ever does that. And I'll go right here and give it a plan name 42. And what I also want to do here is I want to customize the GitHub repository from which I'm going to be pulling code. So what I want to do now is go back out to my GitHub guy, and I'll go over to Downer, and we won't wait for this to happen because it'll take a minute, like I said, to deploy everything. But I want to zoom out, and I want to copy in that Git URL right here. And if I flip back over to my template, I show you this template here. If I scroll down, you can see that I've got the list of SKUs. So I want to create a free guy, and I know that my free SKU is F1. Because free and F, or free starts with F. So I'll do a SKU here, and you'll see that since we've taken a dependency on the ARM editing tools, now when I actually go and try to type any of the stuff, it's going to give me the awesome auto completion, and I can just drop in F1, and then I'm going to add one more parameter here, repo URL, which is over here. Now this is a template that David Ebo wrote from the Kudu team, and he's actually got his own MVC4 app out here, or MVC5 app out here. I'm going to go ahead and put in the downer guy. So you'll see that this is the default value for that template property. If I wanted to change the branch, I could also do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it at master. So I'll say repo URL, and then I'll have to do value here, and then I'll just drop in that guy right here. So now that I've got all this set up, I can go ahead and I can do F1 one more time to pull up all the commands. Again, you see the command palette, and I'm going to look for deploy. I'm going to say I want to deploy one of the Azure Resource Manager templates that I happen to have in my workspace. I've only got one, that 201 web app deploy that I pulled down. I'll go ahead and click that. It's going to say, do you want to use an existing resource group, or do you want to create a new one? I want to create a new one. So I'll just go ahead and call this one SDN Cast Resources, and I'll hit enter. And what you'll see next is it will go out to the fabric, and it has gone ahead and created that resource group, and now it's actually deploying that template out for me. So I'm going to zoom back out again, and the last thing I'll show you are a couple of convenience methods that we have. I'll type in browse right here, and again, I'm hitting F1. You could also do Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P if you're on a Mac. So what I'll do now is I've just done a Control-Shift-P. I can see that I've typed browse, and I can actually browse a specific resource if I want, or I can browse to a specific resource group. So I'm going to select the resource group guy, and now I'm going to go ahead and select the SDN Cast resources that I just created. I'll hit enter, and it's actually going to open up the browser window and put me right out to the portal and go directly to the resource group portal blade, where I've created this web app. You can see that it is indeed deploying. If I were to click on this web app right here, this is the web app that I created using that ARM template. You'll see that it's already wired up to be the external downer GitHub repository. And if I were to go over here right now and click on deployment options, you should see that it is indeed pulling the code from GitHub and running all my grunt tasks and doing a deployment. Now, if you do this, I do want to point out that there's a bug, and I point this out in the downer code. There's a quick bug in the deployment. You would actually have to click this and do a second deployment. It's something I've got to fix in the grunt tasks, or something my buddy Shane is going to fix in the grunt tasks for me, or something that you, the awesome community, could submit for me if you want to. But the idea behind this is, for this particular template, it's just going out and it's looking at a GitHub repository. If I wanted to search again, I could do a search right here, search the Azure Resource Manager. I could do a search really quickly for VM, and you could see here's a list of all the bunch of different VMs that I could create if I want to. If I wanted to create a Linux VM, I could do simple Linux. Again, that's going to pull down the templates. It's going to go ahead and put in some stuff for me. It's got my ARM template here for everything that I would have to manually write if I wanted to do that. I knew how to do that. Or I could just go ahead and put in my parameters here, and then I could do F1, do deploy, and select my VM, and you could actually create a brand new VM directly from within VS Code if you want to, running up in Azure. Last thing that we have is the feature we just added. I do export. Where did I find it? Oh, that's actually one that is in my, that's why it's probably not working. I'm still working on that. We actually have an export resource group as an ARM template feature. That's one of the next things we're going to release probably in the next drop of the tools that we do. And that would actually give you the capability of going out to an existing resource group where you've got a bunch of ARM resources running, and you could basically export that entire resource group directly down to your computer as a ARM template. If you wanted to redeploy it to a different resource group, you could do that. You'll see that the West US that I selected has definitely been persisted here. And we're deploying directly from this GitHub repository. Again, they'll take about 7 or 8 minutes. We're not going to wait around for it. But if you want to learn more about the other features, I've got screencasts for every one of them. If you want to create a web app just on its own, you could do that directly from within the tool. And then you could do git deploy and get your stuff running. So you could actually go out, create a web app using the VS Code tools, Then you go out to the portal using the browse command, set up your Git repository, commit your code to that Git repository, and then everything's going to start deploying. One thing that we have talked about doing that Christos has some experience with is using the Kudu deploy API. I haven't learned how to use it yet. It's basically just a simple REST API that we could throw files at and it would deploy them for us. We haven't done that yet. If you've gotten into Azure Functions, I've got a demo where you could use the code tools to create a new Azure function and deploy it. Some of the great stuff that Ian has done is around storage accounts. If I happen to have a storage account out there, I could do a quick little search for storage. I could get a storage account string. I don't think I have any. I do. So there's one doc search bot. I can actually click this guy, and it's going to say the connection string for that guy has been copied to my clipboard. Now I can go in here, and there's my storage account string. So you can see that these features make it a lot easier for you to kind of get up and running on Azure if you're using VS Code for your stuff. And I'll walk you through the installation process and have a couple of screenshots and screencasts and whatnot. And we're talking about what's next with links to the issues page in the repository. So if you're interested in making the product better, we'd love to have some contributions. If you'd love to tell us how to make it better, we'd love to have your issues. That's pretty much all I had to show. Let me end my screencast here. Screen share. How do I end it? Click that. There we go. So now I'm back.
I just do want to point out that you showed us plenty of demos now in like a short period of time.
Yeah.
Well done. First
Thank
of all,
you.
but I must say the whole integration and seamless working between Downer. If you want to have a website or a blog or something, by the way, that you can customize as a website. With the MSBuild core stuff, because I'm using Ghost for my blog, but
Nice.
it's a pain to sort of customize.
Yeah.
But I'm actually looking at moving to Downer because
Cool.
if you want to have custom stuff doing it, you just apply your knowledge, and from there, obviously you're using Visual Studio Code. Everyone should be using Visual Studio Code if you want to be hip and cool, and then go from there, head it to Azure, and that was literally like one of the best demos I've seen in 20 minutes.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot. I have to do a lightning talk on it. That's good stuff. I mean,
Cool.
yeah, everything that you just saw that I showed you was built using .NET Core and VS Code. Most of it was tested on my wife's Mac. Thank you, honey, for letting me use your Mac. It will run on your Mac, so you could actually pull everything down and hit F5 and run it, thanks to Shane fixing the pathing issues that I had in there. I'm kind of old, so I tend to learn new tricks slowly, like the path convenience features. But I'd love to have your feedback. This is something that we've been doing in our spare time. If you feel like this is something we should do more with, we'd love to have that feedback as well. So just let us know what we can do to make it better.
This was awesome. Thank you very much for having set a few minutes of your precious time aside for us. It was fantastic having you on the show.
Thanks.
And if it's we will have you on in Netherlands in June for the SDN event. So please come see Brady talk.
Please.
And maybe you can share
Will
more.
be June the 23rd, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
So we have to handle some of the logistics of that, but yeah, I think my stuff's up to date, so we should be okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, thanks for your presentation, and well, let's wrap this up and put in the outro and finalize this. Thanks for showing up for us.
No problem. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Cool. Take care. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Is it offline? No. Martin?